Come on, girlfriend, get a seat. Get a seat. I told you the Comedy Act Theater was the hottest club in L.A. In the place to be. Yes, they got some fine comedians and some fine men, too. You know, they got this great MC by the name of Robin Harris. Yes, he's very good. He will talk about anybody, anytime, any place, anywhere, anyhow, for any reason.
I heard the sucker was kind of cute.
I think you need to have your hearing checked. Anyway, I hope one of these fine men offer to buy me a little drink. Just one.
Okay, you got to stop begging, child.
Just a fine one, a nice fine.
Just bring your own.
Excuse me, pretty young.
Oh, my God.
Excuse me, I'm sure a charming young lady like yourself would be interested in some of your intelligent conversation. So like, what's your sign, baby?
Stop sign, damn it. I thought you said they had some firemen in here.
They do. We're just looking for someone that is tall, dark, and handsome.
Tall, dark, and handsome?
Yes.
I just want him to be handsome. A dark guy tried to rob me last night.
Say.
Oh, my God.
You are a comedian?
No, I'm not a comedian.
They told me I could find some comedians down here.
I'm sorry, I'm not a comedian.
You a waitress?
No, I'm
You ain't
not.
a comedian, you ain't a waitress?
No, I'm not a waitress.
What you doing off in here? Security! This woman's impersonator! You should be a comedian, though.
Thank you.
You look funny.
I thought you said this was a nice place.
This is a nice place.
He could have been a lawyer, but he could never pass the bar. Just a total drunk. I told you 1,000 times. Honey, a drunk ain't nothing.
Excuse me, ladies. Is there a problem there?
No. Oh, no, everything is just fine now. Thank you.
I'm sorry about the interruption.
Annie.
But I'd like to buy one of you beautiful young ladies a drink. Can I escort one of you to the bar?
Oh, thank you.
You heard him say a beautiful young lady.
Come on, baby.
How you doing?
Come on, baby.
What part of Compton are you from?
North side.
Well, if you think that's funny, there's lots more where that came from. Hey, I'm Cheryl Lee Ralph, and welcome to the Comedy Act Theater.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, man, good morning. Coffee Conversations with Greg J. Lots going on in the world. They say laughter is the best medicine as we contemplate these days and time. And, you know, we want to just kind of think about that for a minute and contemplate, you know, Black comedy on today. Talk about the legacy, the history of Black comedy. Got a great guest today and brought some friends along. And, you know, how many of y'all in the LA area, you remember that Comedy Act Theater, right? Remember the immortal Robin Harris? So many people we even know, even on today, came through that fantastic venue for comedy. Black comedy. That's what we're talking about on today. You know, saying laughter is the best medicine, and you know, just a serious note, I'm looking across the headlines. You know, you see Cornel West left Howard University, saying that the university has lost its way. Earlier this week, we were talking about Nicole Hannah-Jones leaving or refusing, I should say, her tenure at the University of North Carolina, but picking up tenure over there at Howard University. We talked about Haiti. All across the diaspora, man, there's cultural revolution going on and stress going on. Here at home, we're looking at, you know, they got new strains of the COVID-19, you know, and we're out here trying to find our way back to recovery. We don't know. The times are uncertain. And certainly while we're going through all of this, we stay prayerful, no question. But we also want to, you know, find a way to find some joy in our soul. And we know that comedy is one of those ways to go about that, right? Before we get to our guests, I want to just publicly say, you know, you all know that We're about building bridges of music, arts, and culture between Africa and African America. We've had a lot of our friends come through Coffee Conversations with Greg J from the nation of South Africa. We've had them from Durban. We've had them from KwaZulu-Natal, the Kingdom of the Zulus. We've had them from Johannesburg. And now you're seeing, we woke up to the news today. Last week, they put former President Jacob Zuma in jail, and now the people are rioting all across the country. And it's very, very bad, so bad that they deployed 25,000 troops into the streets to try to regain peace and tranquility in the streets. And for me, it just really grieves me, man, to see my folks over there going through it. Tommy Ngubeni, our good friend who's been on Coffee Conversations a couple of times, newscaster, she's been going straight 48 hours, now. But, I'm just grieving for my people there. I'm grieving for my people down in Haiti, my people in Cuba, all across the diaspora's unrest. But today, I want to try to bring some joy and ignite that joy in my heart with some comedy. I hope you enjoy it on today. When we look at arts and culture in the Black community, comedy is like an essential piece to that whole pie. Isn't that right? Who's your favorite comic? Put that in the chat if you can. Put that in the chat. In the meantime, let's bring in our guest. He is the godfather of Black comedy. A lot of people you probably wouldn't even heard of him wasn't for this guy right here. Right before COVID last year, we were down at the Los Angeles City Hall, and brother got a day named after him, and it was like, wow, the mayor and the entire city council of the city of Los Angeles. Wow, what a fantastic day. And I'm going to tell you something. It remains. I don't know what happened there, but I'm back. Technology. Let's bring in Brother Michael Williams. Michael E. Williams. There he is. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. How
yes,
you doing?
Sir. Good. Well, you saw that clip we opened up with there. Did that bring back some memories for you?
It brings back extremely fond memories. I remember that whole day, the whole week prior to that, setting everything up. And just really the joy of just seeing so many people that came to support, just knowing that they were there for this historic moment back then, not knowing that it would one day be immortalized, basically now forever.
So, right?
Yeah.
I was surprised to find that. I said, let me just find a couple clips here that we could have during our conversation today. And when I came across that, I was like, wow, Cheryl Lee Ralph.
Yeah.
Wow. What
Ronaldo
year was that,
Ray,
Michael?
That was 1986.
Wow.
When I produced that. And that was during the time when really the industry itself, the Hollywood industry, did not believe Black comedy could work. And I was trying to prove to them at that time that it could. So this was before Def Jam, before Comic View, before In Living Color. This was really at the genesis of that spirit of Black organized comedy coming to life. And it just gave so many people an opportunity to just have a place to call their own. And that was both for, the comedian and the audience to have a place where they knew they could come together and enjoy each other's company.
Wow, that's incredible. It's really something. I was thinking about comedy the other day, even before you and I spoke to put this together, because I was watching, now you have all these different channels that we have on TV, right? And we found Shaq's comedy, whatever it was. It was hosted by Mike Epps and all of these different, comedians and everything. So, I was just thinking about how, Black comedy is such a vibrant category now that all over these different channels, you see people with these specials and they're bringing back the old specials. That Shaq thing, that was, years ago. You could tell because folks are looking all young and stuff now. What do you attribute the growth of Black comedy to, now? And are we oversaturated, or what do you think? What's your vibe on the growth and in this expression of culture?
Well, when I first started the club, one thing I knew early, and I'll just simply say, I knew that once it was exposed to our people as something that they could truly get into, it was never going to stop. Mm-hmm. And so we're talking what actually happened as a simple idea of what would it be like if it was all Black 36 years ago. Mm-hmm. Now we are seeing like almost 2.5 generations that have come into this and are prospering, and that's not going to stop. So I think what we are looking at is just a generational advancement in culture, a generational advancement in the bodies of people involved with comedy now, with their own lens and their own point of views in terms of how they see themselves expressing, to the world what they, think and believe. Mm-hmm. And that is something that's just not going to ever stop. And that's one of the beauties of life, is that it's ever evolving. It's just going to continue to sprout forth. And that's, and in a way, it's great for me to have seen, my creation come to life like this.
Michael, I mean, you look at somebody like Dave Chappelle, he's getting Kennedy Center honors. And I mean, his paychecks is like in the skillions, Could you in those days, like, imagine a comedian, a Black comic achieving that level of financial success?
Well, in time, it's inevitable that these people would have made it like that. Now, of course, the amount of opportunity that's allowing these individuals to get, these kind of paydays wasn't like that back in the day. Mm-hmm. But now there's just more of everything. We were limited to the amount of radio stations, television stations, venues. But, you never thought that one day there would be concerts around the country dominated by comedians, like it is today. I mean, there was a time when a comedian was the warm-up act, or the individual to throw out there in case something went wrong technically, and they said, put the comedian out there until we get things together again.
Right.
Now it's almost like the other way around. Musical acts are opening up for the main feature, which is these mega stars, these mega comedian stars that one day we just now are witnessing, are here. I mean, who would have thought that there would be these big names like they are today? And
Kevin Hart filling up stadiums and stuff. Right.
And that's really what I'm talking about. Nobody really saw how big it was going to be until actually the activity started to show itself. And when I say the activity showing itself, I mean Black dollars being spent on what Black people wanted. And whenever Black people say we want something and are willing to spend our money on, that's when everybody else takes a look and says, wait a minute, if they say this is what they want, then let me help them get what they want. And that's when new television shows, movies, commercials, products, everybody jumped in because they saw where Black people were spending their money on these individuals, and that just brought all the masterminds, to get their piece of the pie. So, so that's one of the great things about having had this platform for Black comedy to prosper. And again, Greg, you were there in the early days. I mean, you were probably talked about by Robin maybe once, if not twice. But I'm just saying, you yourself kind of saw that whole creation come to life. And, I have no idea what you may have thought at that time when you first saw it, but I just know that one of the joys that everybody had back then was that they recognized that this was something for Black people. It's like, oh, this is cool. This is for us.
Yes,
and
yes.
next thing, shall I say, we know we're talking about it right now.
Talking about it right now. Yeah, it's interesting because, comedy has always been an integral thread in the whole, quilt, if you will, of Black arts and culture, because it is an art, and
Right.
back in the day, for us, you had, Shorty Long, and you had Moms Mabley and Red Fox, but those were records, right? Bill Cosby,
Right. Right.
The whole thing is, but those were, kind of blue, right? In my household, we had to break into my dad's record collection in order to listen to those, artists, and they were kind of blue. But let me ask you this: one thing I was noticing when I was watching the Shaq special the other day, and again, understand it was a few years ago. I guess Shaq had either just retired or, right when he was beginning to build his business empire, he dipped into comedy. But I wanted to ask you, when the artists come out, the comedian comes out, and I'm not saying it because I'm offended, because I know it's just a part of the shtick, but the comedian needs to come out and make sure that he says some cuss words. And I noticed that this is almost kind of like they're showing the audience, I'm about to be funny. That's kind of the badge. I'm here. Now I'm just going to cuss. Why is that? What is the essence of the art that causes us to do that?
Well, I think at this point, I like to bring in my other two guests, because one of them is a comedian that could really better address that. But I will simply say that part of that is simply because that's the culture of what a lot of Black comics thought is what we, the audience, the Black audience, wanted, because nobody was really telling them, no, don't do that. Try and be a little bit more on the creative side. But when you have so many people doing it and following each other because they realize that, the artist before them was getting these big laughs, they're like, well, why should I deviate to do something else when I could just follow suit? And so you just had one after the other, and it just became the norm for so many to think that profanity and sex jokes and being as dirty as possible was the way to go. When in essence, when I look at, for example, a lot of Comic View and Def Jam artists that were like that, it's like, where are they now? See, the smart ones knew how to get in and get out. Those are a lot of your big name comedians now, because they were on Def Jam and Comic View. Yeah, they did a lot of cursing and profanity, but they don't do it now.
Right.
Those checks are a little bit too big for them to be doing all that. So in other words, you got those that understand the game and those that are just still in the game, not understanding, the rules to the game. So that's kind of what I see on that subject.
All right. Well, go ahead and bring your guest in so we can chit chat.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to introduce Carla with a K. Carla
with a K.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello. Hi.
Look, I'm actually I'm kind of mad at you, but I'm not mad at you with the without your picture, because see, I can still reminisce on your radio voice.
Well, thank you. Yeah, if Michael told me I was going to be on camera, I would have been prepared. Michael.
Funny. You know what, y'all? Let me.
You could have wore a hat. You could have wore a hat.
Let me just say, y'all. I don't know if the audience remember, every now and again, I'm always pumping up this thing about Black radio and Black radio history. And in our industry, whenever they talk about the history of Black radio, it is almost always from an East Coast perspective. You don't, you're going to hear about Frankie Crocker and all these people, Butterball out there in Philadelphia, and all of those great names. And no doubt you should. But there is a exceedingly rich West Coast radio perspective. And I would put Carla with a K in that Hall of Fame of West Coast radio.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll take it.
And let's go ahead and bring in Nasser. Nasser Metcalf. Yes.
Oh, so you told Nasser, huh? Okay.
Oh yeah.
Or is it a man-female thing? Maybe that's what it is. Makeup and all that.
I had to, I had to get it together pretty quick too. It was short notice, but we're here. It's all love, no matter what.
And a shout out to Daryl Mooney is on here too. He's out there in the audience. He's been commenting there, and our condolences to you, son of one of the twins, son of the great Paul Mooney. There, our condolences to you, and big love to you, brother Daryl. Have y'all come on here and give some of that knowledge of what you are advocating for all across our community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
But let's go ahead and let both Carla and Nasser kind of introduce themselves to everybody and give a little backstory on the relationship that we've shared over the years. Because one of the things that I want to first express is that Carla was with me from day one, and I mean
I didn't know that.
Day one, yeah. And Nasser,
hey, Daryl.
We met as a result of my third comedy club in a chain of 4 in Atlanta, Georgia. He was one of our regulars that came on board and was there, again, almost from day one in Atlanta, comedy act. So,
yes, I am so thankful to be here. I truly appreciate, Greg, your show, and Michael for inviting me. Nasser, it's great to see you. I didn't know you.
Pleasure
I was in LA when
yes,
I met Michael in 1982 at the KJLH Community Appreciation Concert.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I'm dating myself, dating all of us, right?
Yeah.
But,
at USC.
I moved out to LA in the day after Christmas. In 1984, I drove out to Los Angeles and I celebrated the new year in 1985 there in LA. Michael and I reconnected. And by August of 1985, Michael had determined that he was going to open the Comedy Act Theater. And we had been talking about it. He said he decided to do it in March of 1985. And then we talked about it and we did it in August of 85. And it was just an incredible experience. We opened on Crenshaw at an African spot, right, Michael?
Right.
And that place didn't quite work out. And then Michael found the Regency West. And so 2 weeks later, and then, it was the Regency West from then on out. And so much happened from that first time that we did that. Of course, Robin Harris, we all know and remember and love him. But just, when you talk about 1985 and you think about the state of the industry, not a lot was going on with Black folk, period. Much less Black comedy and Black radio, all of that. And as I look back and remember it, now I'm thinking about when I joined the union, and then the comedians, I brought them, kind of encouraged them to get involved with the union, which was SAG-AFTRA. We weren't merged at that time, SAG and AFTRA. Mm-hmm. So I'm sorry, I have an incoming video call and it's messing me up. I'm sorry. Okay. So, in terms of business and understanding the business, it was kind of new. It was new to everybody. And we all just learned it and embraced it and grew through it together. So I'll elaborate more, but in terms of some of the specifics that happened, like with BET and Comic View, and of course Def Jam, we saw the evolution of a lot of comedic careers. There are certain comedians. I mean, if you think about the well-known comedians at that time, I mean, Flip Wilson, Richard Pryor, Red Fox. I mean, they were the icons. Eddie Murphy. We didn't even we knew Arsenio, but just a little bit. Everybody wasn't really hip to Arsenio. So there was a lot that evolved out of this, since August of 1985 when the Comedy Act Theater opened. And we'll talk about that more as we go on. But I helped Michael with public relations and marketing and getting some press in, some of the local newspapers, the Sentinel, and the we had to deal with the cultural papers. We didn't have access to the LA Weekly at first, but eventually I think we got into the LA Weekly and some more mainstream papers. But because of the celebrities that came through, we were able to garner a lot of publicity and articles and get a lot of promotion out of because we had the Lakers coming through there. Vanessa Bell Calloway, she was a prominent actress at the time, and all kinds of other actors.
Whichever you like.
Michael, I know, can roll off those names. Go ahead, Greg. I'm sorry.
I was just saying, whichever you like.
Right. Yeah. So,
coming to America.
But go ahead, Nasser. I'm not going to dominate the conversation.
I'm enjoying hearing you review all this history for us. As Michael said, I stepped in a little bit after that, so it's like nice to connect all the dots and understand what the pre-story is prior to when I first got involved. And as Michael said, I got involved at the Atlanta Club. Because I was in school at Morehouse at the time, and I was a theater major, and I was doing my thing with the acting and stuff at school. But I also had this passion for stand-up, and so I kind of had this dual existence throughout my college years, where one semester I would be in the theater and I'd be building sets, and I'd be acting, and I might stage manage, and I might hang lights, and I'd do all this different stuff, and I'd be immersed in the theater, and they wouldn't see me at the comedy club. Then the following semester, I might take a really lighter load class-wise in the theater and just, kind of do, the bare minimum that I need over there. But they would see me every night at the comedy club. And we would do like 8 shows a week because we had 2 shows on Friday, 2 shows on Saturday. So I was like living in the Comedy Act Theater at the time. So it was great because I was able to kind of explore, both sides of my creative passions at that time through comedy and drama and theater and stand-up. So it was an amazing time. And like you said, it was a historic time looking back on it now because of all the rich talent that came through and thankfully we had this breeding ground. And, many of those people are household names today and have impacted the landscape of the entire culture from entertainment, arts and entertainment, and culture in general. This whole world looks different now because of the Comedy Act Theater. And a lot of people don't realize it. But the landscape of entertainment and millions and millions of people have been impacted by the great talents that were nurtured at that breeding ground that was the Comedy Act Theater. So, just very, very grateful to have been around for that and to have experienced it and to have participated to the extent that I did.
And I would like everybody to know real quick, Greg, Nasser, if you could just name the individuals that you worked with back then that you came up with.
Man. Oh man, I mean the list just goes on and on and on. I mean, it's really a who's who. I mean, from Bernie Mac to Jamie Foxx to Mike Epps to Chris Tucker, Joe Torre, the late great Ricky Harris. you know, and these are the first times I'd met any of these people. George Wallace, who's still a very good friend of mine to this day. First met him at the Comedy Act Theater. Man, just pretty much anybody you want to name. Dave Chappelle, like everybody came through at some point, you know, and we all, you know, did our thing. Bruce, you know, the house MC during my time there when we first got things started at the Comedy Act was Rex Garvin. Shout out to Rex. And it's just so, you know, you talk about just so many different cultural influences that stem from the Comedy Act Theater. You know, there's a phrase that people say today, "Bye, Felicia," you know, and that's become like this cultural phrase, and it stems from the movie Friday. And there was a character in that film named Felicia who was a crackhead and was trying to borrow Ice Cube's VCR, and they were like, "Bye, Felicia." And so people have quoted that, and that's just become a phrase, you know, it's part of the language of the culture now. Well, that actress who portrayed that character was Angela Means, who got her start at the Comedy Act Theater as a waitress, believe it or not. And so she was, but she was a model also. She had the model-esque look. So she would get up and do a little bit of a warm-up before bringing up the house MC. And she started getting like one or two jokes here and there. And then next thing you know, she started building a set and building like a whole act, you know, and then next thing you know, she was a performer. She was a bona fide performer. And then she did films. She did that film. She did Friday. She did, you know, House Party 3. She's done her thing. So it just, the tentacles are just endless when you really start to look at it and retrace that history.
Essential part of the culture, no question. You know, you know, Michael, I'm thinking, man, Comedy Act Theater, Atlanta. How many cities did you execute the Comedy Act Theater?
I was in a total of 4 cities: Oakland, Atlanta, Chicago, and LA. And the unfortunate journey during that time was when I opened up Oakland, about maybe a week into getting that started, I had a younger brother shot and killed, and that just really took the spirit and the energy out of me keeping that particular venue. You know, I tried to hold on to it for as long as I could, and I think I kept that about 8 to 10 months. And then when I opened up Chicago, which was the 4th club, a year later, I was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and eventually, one by one, I had to let the whole empire go.
Well, clearly, it was not terminal.
Well, that's what they
thanks be to God.
Yeah, they told me that.
Yeah.
Well,
God has the last word.
They don't have the last word on that one.
Amen.
That adds to the legend of Michael Williams, you know. I mean, he's just, you know, he's done so many incredible things in this world, in this life, including beating cancer, you know. So,
and it ain't over.
That's right. That's right. You know, it's interesting. You mentioned Bernie Mac, the legendary Bernie Mac, may rest in peace. I mean, when I would go on sales calls, I was working for Lee Bailey and Radio Scope back in the day. I was a sales manager, and I used to go back to Chicago to do my sales calls, and I, you know, go over to the South Side. I would go into this club, and I was trying to remember the name of the club, and this is where I was first introduced to Bernie Mac. This dude was coming out with a full band, horn sections, and everything. You know,
it was called a Cotton Club.
Okay, that was a Cotton Club. Okay, that's right.
Well, if he was coming out with the full band, that might have been Mel Treniers. That might have been after. Was that after Bernie started becoming a little bit successful, or was this when you hadn't heard of Bernie?
No, this was.
Oh, so this is
not
the
known.
Club. Yeah, this is the Cotton Club.
That was a Cotton Club.
Yeah. See, I'm from Chicago, so I used to be at the Cotton Club like all the time. I was in Atlanta going to school, but I was from Chicago. So when I wasn't in school during summer or breaks or Christmas or whatever, I was home in Chicago, and I was running very, very tight with Bernie. Actually, we were very, very close at the time. And I'm still very, very close with his family, his widow, his daughter, and I. I was just home last month and got together with Bernie's daughter, and so we're still very much like a family. And the Cotton Club, those are magical days as well.
Yeah. I went to the Cotton Club. We used to go to Chick Rick's, all those little
Mhm,
spots.
mhm. Yeah, those are the
Yeah.
heroes.
Madison
Heroes.
Street, Jeanette. Yes.
Heroes. Yep.
Wow.
Mhm.
Man, I slipped and fell on some black ice in Chicago, and I could still crack my elbow. I still have the fractures in my
Oh,
elbow. I
my.
can feel them.
Oh,
Wow.
wow.
Well,
That's something.
I mean, time was so early that when I the way I met Martin Lawrence and
Mhm,
Sinbad at
mhm,
this place I was working. I was renting furniture. I was
mhm,
working for Court Furniture Rental, and Sinbad came in to rent furniture. Now Sinbad, he had already done Star Search, so he was known, and he was doing his thing. But when Martin Lawrence came in, he had just gotten it. He was just coming from DC. He had just gotten a deal for What's Happening Now, for that
mhm,
TV show.
mhm,
And
mhm,
he was not known to do stand up. I guess he had done something to get him that show, from in DC. But he had just moved to LA, and it was another furniture rental company I was working at. I met a lot of people with their furniture. But anyway, so Martin came in, and I furnished his house, with this furniture, and he was really cool, and he didn't have an entourage. He was really just normal, regular, brother, but
mhm.
he was really nice, and he was amusing, but I just think about that. That was before he was Martin Lawrence that he is now, or that he later became with his series and his show. And I mean, it's just that long ago that all of this transpired, and that because Martin did come down to the Comedy Act, and we just saw so many people flourish through the Comedy Act. Robert Townsend, it was before he had his shows. Now he did have Meteor Man and the film, the
Hollywood
five. Well,
Shuffle.
no, he hadn't done the Five Heartbeats yet.
Yeah.
Right.
He
He was
did.
actually working on Hollywood Shuffle about 80, I think that was 87, 88, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. And the Wayans, they hadn't done In Living Color yet. They were
Right.
just, getting their leg. Well, I guess I can't really say what they had been doing before this, all because I just knew them when they came to the Comedy Act. Kim,
Right.
Yeah.
Damon,
Well, yeah.
and Keenan. Sean, he was probably a toddler. I don't know if he was a toddler, but he was a little boy. He wasn't even in the business at the time, and Marlon
Right.
certainly wasn't even thought of at that
Right.
time.
Right.
Right.
And they would not have had In Living Color had it not been for my improv group, the Comedy Act Players. And that's where the inspiration came for that, because the Wayans brothers, Keenan and Damon, brought their manager and one of the executives at the new network station, which was Fox Television, which was unknown at the time. And
Right.
they saw, the improv group, which came out of the fact that when I had the Comedy Act in its early beginnings, Robin Harris was such a special individual that he, for the most part, dominated everything. He took all the time, over a 4-hour course of laughter. And the comedians were just like, man, Robin's taking all the time. We can't get on. And what I ended up realizing was that because it was in its infancy and a lot of people were coming for their first opportunities to try to become, a professional comedian, I decided to try to give them as much time as possible. And that's when I formed the improv group, because that gave them a chance to, for some, to actually be on stage twice in a night. First in the improv group, then later in the evening to showcase their individual talent. But it was part of, again, that element of having that improv group that allowed the likes of, again, In Living Color to come to life, because, again, the more Black comedians came to the focus, the more people realize, oh, there's a force that's reckoning now. There's a force that's emerging. There's a voice that we hadn't really heard. And that voice was starting to really roar its strength. And that's why the explosion again came with, the Jamie Foxx show, the Martin show.
Yes.
In other words, all these shows and relationships were birthed right out of the Comedy Act in LA.
That's when real business was
Yeah,
being handled in
yeah,
the industry with Black folks,
yeah.
because we didn't really know even how to do it. A lot of us didn't know how to do it. We weren't part of the union. I'm an actress, and I didn't really know how to do that. So but I did radio, and that kind of helped me learn more about the union. And so then there was Comic View. And Comic View was screwing the comedians at first. They were paying them $150 to perform, and they were the comedians had to provide their own transportation and their own lodging in California at that time. And then worse than that, which I thought was really egregious and offensive, was that they would they would splice up their performances on Comic View and resell them on DVDs. And the
Right.
comedians didn't get any piece of that.
Right.
So, knowing all of that, I became a real advocate for the union. And Buddy Lewis, and there were some other people, and Lauren Bailey was she was like just a godsend at AFTRA at that time. She was in charge of television. She was a representative for television, and a Black woman, and she really helped me, and through me helped the comedians get a lot of comedians into the union, and also crack that Comic View situation where they ended up getting paid what they should have gotten paid, like maybe about $1,500, I think, for their performance instead of $150. And they started, taking care of the lodging and the transportation and doing business the way it should have been done. But we didn't even know, because we didn't, we had no experience in that.
Carla, this is an interesting point right here, because we're always talking about, we're in a place of cultural revolution right now. It is more apparent now more than ever that we have to be about telling our own stories, because when others get involved, we get shortchanged on the business end of it, or
Yes.
just all kinds of situations and circumstances happen. When others come in, we're kind of hypnotized by, the grass is greener on the other side. But then when we start getting those checks, we show, and that's it's really kind of crazy, and we have to really be about the business of telling our own stories, support those executives who are able to get into those seats of the important organizations like SAG-AFTRA. We see on the music side what's happening inside of the Grammy Academy, so that things could be more equitable. We're starting to see now arts and culture directing more financial resources and education towards communities of color, so that we can get our fair share when we're out there, when our artists are out there expressing their art. This is really, really important. The story you just told, man, it's important. It's essential right now.
Well, yeah, and really recognizing the history that, we're only talking 36 years ago. There's some people who are just 36 now. We're 20 years into the 21st century, So when you really think about that time frame, you can see what can happen in a short period of time. But it's an actual lifetime for some people, 36
Right,
years old, you're
right,
grown,
right.
But since that time, we have seen so many comedians that have risen to major ranks, and they probably don't even know from whence that came. They don't realize that this history lies right there in Leimert Park, at the Regency West. It started at the Comedy Act Theater. Because everybody gets like self-focused, and they're into whatever they're into, but they don't really realize how we affect each other. And we do need to connect the dots and share the story. So, Greg, I really appreciate this opportunity to, even talk about this today.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're all about telling our story here. We want to talk about the Regency West. People, you mentioned Vanessa Bell Calloway, her and her husband own that place
Yep,
there.
Tony.
There in, right there in Lamert Park. You're looking at the World Stage. You're looking at, a few other places there, and there's a renaissance going on. The Vision Theater, hopefully coming to life soon. We talked to Mark Ridley Thomas, who's now the councilman over that area, and he's promising he's going to complete, the renaissance that's happening over there. They're calling it Lamert Park Rising, but we have to support that area, and we have to support and understand the history. That whole little section of the Crenshaw community in Los Angeles. Did y'all know the Total Experience burned down not too long ago?
What?
Sounds
like arson to me.
Look, to the ground. We were driving over there on a business. We were taking care of some business over in Lamert Park, and we hit that corner. I'm like, what happened to the Total? It was just rubble. And I went over and I talked to them. It had happened the night before, and I went out and talked to the fire guys that were investigating, two brothers, and they couldn't say what it was, but
Well, if I could add my 2 cents, I did see the building after the fact, but it looked like a professional burn.
Right?
Okay.
Professional.
I mean, just the story sounds like arson to me.
Yeah.
It was manicured.
Yes, brother.
Nothing else was touched.
Yes.
Wow.
I mean,
I just want to really give a quick little story about Vanessa and Tony Calloway, because again, there's a little history that a lot of people might not know. But Vanessa used to be like my running buddy. We would go to parties, plays, picnics. And when I started the club, she was there to support me. So one night she asked me, she said, Michael, who's this guy over here? And I looked and I said, I don't really know him, but I don't like him because he tried to sneak in the club. And obviously she liked him enough because she married him. And that's Tony Calloway.
The club.
Wow. Isn't that
something? Her father and his business partner, who I was doing business with, were the actual owners during that time.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Isn't that
something? So I'm saying a lot of people met at that club. There's been a lot of babies born as a result, coming out of that club. So, a lot of things took place.
So can I add that, when the Atlanta club first opened, it was a major event for me because I had heard the legend of the LA club. I had only been doing comedy maybe about 2 years, but everybody knew about the Comedy Act Theater. It was this legendary place where all these Black comedians had this mecca to go to perform and work on our craft. And I just used to hear all these legendary stories about how Eddie Murphy would show up with Arsenio and Magic Johnson and just be in the audience. And, and I was like, man, this just sounds like this, this amazing dream-like place for somebody who's just in Chicago and Atlanta, where we didn't have anything like that. So when I got the word that there was going to be a version of this club opening in Atlanta, I mean, it was just like, oh, I got to be a part of this, and I hadn't been, like I said, I'd only been doing comedy about 2 years at that point. Nobody knew me. I hadn't made a name for myself at all, or anything like that at that point. I was a student. I wasn't even old enough to be in the club, but we will get to that at that time. But I looked like I could, and I handled myself, in a professional manner, so it was never an issue. But I had gotten some good advice from Michael. We talked about this before, from another comic who was from Chicago but used to work at the LA club. This guy named Jeff Arnold, right? So Jeff told me, listen, when Comedy Act opens in Atlanta, Michael Williams. I had never met Michael. He was like, Michael's not gonna put you on as a comic. He's got too many, people that you're just not gonna really get in there like that. He was like, what you should do is offer to work the light for him. And that was like, be in the booth with the spotlight, and while the comics on stage, I just keep following them with the light. And so I showed up on the night that the club opened, and it was an amazing show with all these amazing comics. And I was just like, wow. So I saw Michael afterwards. I introduced myself, and I told him I was a comic, and he was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, whatever." But then I said, "But listen, hey, man, you know, if you need somebody to come work the light, I can do that for you too." And he was like, "Now that we can talk about." And I was like, "Okay, yeah, let's do it." So the next night I showed up and I began working the light, and I worked the light for, I don't know, probably at least a couple months. And I from time to time, you know, drop in like, "Yeah, I'm a comic too, you know, I can get up there and get on stage." And one night, I had kind of let one of the comics walk out of the light and then tried to catch up with them. And after the show, Michael came pulled me to the side. I said, "Hey, man, you just got to really make sure you keep up with these guys on the light and this and that." I said, yeah, that's cool. I said, "Definitely, man. I'm sorry about that. You know, I'm just used to being kind of on the other side of it, though." So, you know, he just kind of looked at me like, "All right, man." So eventually, though, on like a slow, like Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever, wasn't, you know, too much going on, he threw me up and let me do a few minutes. And I did my set, and I rocked it good enough where, you know, I never had to work the light again. And from then on, I was just on. I was still coming to the club every night, but he got somebody else doing the light, and I was on stage. And you know, and I'm eternally grateful to you for that opportunity. You know, I love having that story because it's like sometimes I'm in a position where I'm mentoring or giving advice to young talent who's coming up and trying to figure out their way. And I'm like, listen, you know, you got to think of creative ways to get your foot in the door on opportunities. And I have that story to rely on to give them an example of ways to, you know, try and further yourself in situations that, you know, you may not necessarily have the traditional route towards. So, so these, you know, these are one of many stories that I'm sure we could all talk about.
Man, you know this. Go ahead, Carla.
And you know, speaking of that, you know, Michael and I were talking last night, and we were talking about how we got the comedians in the first place. That Michael didn't actually have. Well, we had auditions that first night on Crenshaw, when, you know, at that place that we didn't end up using. But after a while, I mean, we had to build, you know, a list of comedians, and that happened over time. And basically, it was like, you know, get up and see what you can do. You know, it wasn't like a real serious audition process. But after a while, that's when, you know, Michael had to start really, he got such a plethora of comedians that they had to call him and see if they could get on. Right, Michael? Can you talk about that? How you built the list of comedians? Because you didn't always have that massive list.
Well, no, not in the beginning. And that's why I use so many over and over and over again. But what started to prove itself, and that was repetition always gets the better of everything. And so many of those individuals started to get better. The word started to get out to whereas other comedians came and knew first and foremost, they never had to audition. All they had to do was just simply ask, "Hey, can I get on stage? I'm a comic." And sometimes I would just let them go up like right then and there. Case in point, one night, a guy walked up to me, tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, I'm from DC. I'm a comic. You know, I heard about the club. I like to perform tonight." And I actually looked at my watch and just simply said, "Hey, man, don't have time. Come back tomorrow." So the next night, which was a Friday night, I get a tap on my shoulder. I turn around. It's the same guy. And he says, "I'm here." And I say, "Well, you're next." Just like that. And I will simply say that when he came off of the stage, all I could simply do is put my arm around him and say, "Welcome to the family." And that comedian was Martin Lawrence.
Wow.
Wow.
And that was for so many. In other words, my position was Black comedians needed a place where they didn't have to basically ask for permission to be themselves. The white so-called mainstream clubs, they wanted you to either tone it down or to be less Black. And my position and philosophy was, no, you be a human like they are being human. why should we have to be somebody that we aren't? Let's just be ourselves. And that's why I never decided to ever audition anybody, because my position was the stage is where you F up until you get it right. So I don't care if you bomb. Well, you keep bombing until you get it right. And so many have succeeded. So many have succeeded.
Yes.
We
had a few token whites, like Gary Owen.
Yes, we did. Jason Stewart, Honest
Jabrani, Maz Jabrani. He's not white, but other.
Yeah. Dave Parker was another one. Dave Parker was our first white comedian who simply got on stage with an attitude and said, "I ain't scared of y'all." And everybody just hit the floor laughing, and he proceeded to just get into his act, and he became one of our favorites.
It is a joy to see, Jamie. Jamie Foxx is one who I remember Jamie Foxx when I was the manager of the Poetess, and he used to be at all the little community showcases. He was not known. He was a friend of the Poetess, and to watch him now to be this mega superstar, Academy Award winning guy, I sit there and go, dang. I remember he was just a little, young and, opening at all these little community events that we used to do, all around Los Angeles. And it's really something to see. My other really good memory is when I first came to KJLH Radio, one of my first promotions was to present it was a promotion for the box set of Richard Pryor, Best of Richard Pryor with Rhino Records. And so we presented Richard Pryor with the Lifetime Achievement Award. He was not doing too well in those days. He was still, in a wheelchair, but he came and we did it at the Comedy Act up there on Sunset. And my lineup was
that's the
Comedy Store. Yeah, Comedy Store. I'm sorry. I said Comedy Act. I'm addicted to Comedy Act, So I just say, we had a great lineup. We had Chris Spencer, we had Damon Wayans, Paul Mooney, and we were going to have Steve Harvey, but that was also the same week that he signed on for the first time over at 92.3 The Beat. And so that was really something to do, but it was great. It was a private event for music retailers and all of that, but it was just a Hall of Fame situation, and I will never ever forget that evening was full of laughter and just full of history. But man, this is really, really great to listen to, the history of Black comedy. Michael, I want to ask you, all right, were the kings of comedy? Are they truly the kings of comedy? Remember the movie came out, so it's like you had Cedric, Steve, who else? DL, and
Bernie Mac, Well, for me, that was just a title, a marketing title to sell tickets, because we had so many other comedians during that time that were just as funny or even, more. But, everybody brought to the table what they had. So I couldn't really pit one over the other in terms of who was better than who. It was just that you could only stick so many in on a card at one time. Because I think at the time we still had the likes of Dave Chappelle,
Martin,
Sinbad, yes, Martin,
Chris Tucker was
Eddie.
Eddie Griffin. I mean, there
Eddie
was
Murphy.
so many other ones.
Eddie Griffin too.
Yeah, but I'm just saying there were so many other comedians, but they were just at the time very popular, because they were just popular at the time, and you just go with your sure hitters. And
that was a marketing.
It was marketing. But I do want to insert real quick, since we talked about Jamie Foxx being an Academy Award winner. That's one thing that the Comedy Act can actually boast, and that is an Academy Award winner came out of both the LA Club, which is Jamie Foxx, and the Atlanta Club, which was Monique.
Wow.
And those were both amateurs that got their
Wow.
beginnings, you know, in the organized effort to bring Black comedy and make it, you know, what it is today.
And it's Black talent, basically,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because you know most actors really started as comedians. I mean, most of the comedies, I mean the movie stars that we see today, even like James Carrey. I mean, what's with Jim Carrey?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, started out as a comedian. Most actors we've seen become really blockbusters start out as comedians. Many of them.
Many of them did. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, now let me ask all of you all. Okay, so now you've come through this great, exceptional history. You've made your mark. You've paved the way. You've done that. The legacy is set. Nobody can take that away from you. Who do you see coming up that is, you know, where you say, okay, you know what, they're about to blow up. They're about to be somebody or be an influence on the culture. Who do you see?
I like this guy named Robert Powell. Y'all hip to Robert Powell?
No, I'm not.
Check him
I'm
out.
not.
Check him out. He was on one of those I think one of those Shaq All Star things. He was one of the featured lineup, one of the featured comics on the lineup. He's out of Louisiana originally. But slim dude, so funny, exceptionally funny. So I got my eye on him. Check out Robert Powell. Yeah.
Well, you know, the whole thing is that being on a comedy stage, it's lending you exposure. And what I've observed over the years is that it's about how you become exposed. You know, it's not necessarily going to be your talent, you know, that you get exposed through, you know, comedy, athletics, singing, whatever it is. It's about your exposure and then your marketability. I mean, you know, Jennifer Hudson, you know, she did Star Search as a singer, and then it parlayed her into acting, and she won, you know, an Oscar. So, and then we see, you know, so it's really about your avenue of how you get exposed. So we may be looking at Simone Biles. Oh my goodness, that woman is incredible as an athlete. Now, if she can act, you know, she may be, you know, phenomenal.
That's true. That's true.
But it's really about, you know, how you're exposed and the talent that you innately possess, and then being exposed and having a, you know, either a script or some project that catapults you to stardom. You know, so I'd say Simone Biles. I'm really impressed with that young lady. And she does, I haven't seen her open her mouth other than say, thank you. You know, I'll see you at the Olympics or whatever. I don't know. But
Right.
that's how
All
I
right.
see talent these days.
All right. You know, for me, I really embrace the arts. I'm all about arts and culture. I'm, you know, vice president of the Arts Council for Long Beach, and steeped me in a lot of, you know, not only music, but, you know, symphony, painting. I mean, just all sorts of arts, and I'm an advocate for the arts at a lot of levels. And I believe that comedy is an art form, and I think it's probably easy for a lot of people not to look at it as art. But I'd like for each of you to tell me, answer this question: is comedy art?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely, without question. I mean, it's an art form. It's a craft. It's like, you know, it's interesting how a lot of times guys who are like funny in school or funny at work or all this stuff think that they can just get on stage and be a successful comedian, and they learn very quickly. In fact, there was an episode of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, I don't know if you recall, where Will Smith's character thought that, you know, he was going to be a successful stand-up, and D.L. Hewley, who was actually doing the warm-up for the show at the time, wound up being a guest star on there and playing one of his old friends from Philly, who was actually a professional comic, and came to visit and was, you know, working on his comedy and all this. So Will thought he was going to get on stage and just be Mr. Funny because he was always so funny in life. And he quickly learned that it was a a completely different animal. He wound up bombing, and DL jumps on stage and saves him by doing his act and showing him like this is what it means to be a professional comedian. I thought that was profound. I really appreciated them dedicating a whole episode to that because a lot of people, you tell somebody you're a comic or people introduce you as a comic, that, a lot of times first thing people say, all right, man, make me laugh. All right, man, say something funny. And it's like, it doesn't really work that way. So it's definitely a craft. It's definitely an art form. And without question, you have to dedicate yourself to it. Just like learning how to play an instrument, just like learning how to sing, learn anything. You have to practice. You have to, be committed to it. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I'm going to say comedy is definitely an art because when I think about, again, when I started the club, 1985, and I have no idea what the numbers may have been on the amount of comedians that called themselves comedians and were professional in their careers. Black, during that time, had to be, and I'm just going to say probably less than 30 Black comedians in the country that could call themselves professional back then. But now you can't even name the amount that are or call the number of Black comedians that exist today.
Oh yeah.
And I have no clue, of the younger generation. I mean, I know some, but there's just so many now that have seen the opportunity to, really make their mark. And one of the things that I will safely say is that I am really so proud of the Black female comedians because now they have found their niche, and so many of them have gotten so much better over the years that, again, I'm just so proud that so many of them are doing their thing.
No question.
Very, very, very awesome, man. Our time is running out here, and we could stay on all day just talking about this, but we got to go and get on with our day. Thank you so much for coming through. But before we go, Michael, talk about all this history, all the memories that you have. What are we doing to conserve and immortalize even the more your story?
Well, I'm currently still working on my personal memoir about how I started, the whole organized effort to bring Black comedy to life. That is still a book that's, still in progress. But I'm also working on an anthology, history book that I can't really go too deep into details, but I will simply say that I am wanting all those that know their personal history and memories with the Comedy Act that may want to participate to follow me on Instagram, Comedy Act Planet on Instagram, and look out for the details as to how they can get involved with this particular history. Because again, if we don't do our own, or shall I say, record our own history, somebody else will. And that's just not going to happen as far as I'm concerned. So anybody who want to, again, participate with this project, I welcome you to come on board with your memories, your experiences, anything that you have, that you want to contribute.
So we put that IG in the chat. We put the website in the chat, comedyactplanet.com. That's correct there, Michael? Yep.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Mr. Daser, you have anything to say before we go to the peoples?
Well, I mean, just thank you all so much for tuning in and for listening to this history. We just scratched the surface. We just got the tip of the iceberg in today. So there's a lot more. So do follow Michael and learn more about this history. It's important. Excuse me. It's influenced a lot of the world that you see around you today. Like the foundation is really there when it comes to what Michael achieved with giving this platform to so much talent and giving everybody a platform and a breeding ground to nurture their gifts. So again, I thank you, Michael, for I'll always thank you for that, man. I'll always feel indebted to you for that, brother. And Greg, thank you for having me on. Carla, it was such a pleasure to meet you and participate in this with you. And thank you all so much. Continue to support Black comedy.
All right. Thank you, Carla with a K. You got anything to say to the people before we go?
Hey, I just want to thank you again, everyone, for sharing these thoughts and ideas. And yes, we were part of history. Going back into the 21st. Going back into the 20th century, and let us remember that there's a lot of value of having lived most of our lives in the 20th century, because we have a lot to look back on and reflect on. But as we move forward in the 21st century and we embrace this technology, let us take full advantage of every aspect of it and tell our stories and make sure that they are anchored in history, because it's very important for our legacy and our progeny, and for us to continue in this world. We don't know where we're going beyond this vaccination. I'm not even going to talk about that. We're not going there. But after we get out of this pandemic, let's roll.
Let's roll. That's right. That's right. Tell our own stories. Thank you all so much for coming on Coffee Conversations with Greg J. And you all can get this on the page, our Facebook page, Coffee Conversations with Greg J. If you haven't done it already, go ahead and like that page. It'll be on demand at Beach City Radio, beachcityradio.com. And then also the audio version, we make this into a podcast. And so later on today, wherever you get your favorite podcasts, I'm talking Apple, Spreaker, iHeart, Google, all the places, we're out there. Coffee Conversations with Greg J is there for you to consume. This is important work that we're doing. We're about preserving music, arts, and culture. We're about embracing our community. We're coming, we're based here in Long Beach, California. That's where we live, but we are global. We're looking at our community from a global perspective. And man, what about history? Look at that. We just had the Comedy Act Theater, the history. The Comedy Act Theater right here at Coffee Conversations. Remember last week we had the guy talking about the first African-American to own a record label for his music from the 20s and everything. It's like, hey, this is what we're doing, telling our own stories, okay? All right, that's what we do it. Just remember, love one another. Love one another.
All right. Great.
Love one another. Peace and blessings.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
God bless you.
All right, you guys. All right, Carla.
All right.
Yep.